You are listening to episode 74, Sandtray Therapy with Lynn Langley.
Welcome to Play Therapy Community Podcast, providing connection, information, and inspiration to child therapists all around the world. Here's your host, a licensed psychotherapist, a registered play therapist, and my mom, Jackie Flynn.
It is important to know that this episode was recorded before COVID-19, so you may hear mention of opportunities no longer available.
So if you've ever been in my office, you probably know that sand can be found on the floor and on some of the shelves pretty much at any given time. Sure, I clean it, and I clean it often, but as many Sandtray therapists do, I struggle with leaving the sand in the sand tray, or should I say my clients struggle. It is so very worth it. I love Sandtray Therapy, and I love Jurassic Sands. It's the best. I've tried so many sands over the years. Jurassic Sands is non-allergenic. It just feels really good to the touch, and I've had mine literally for years, since 2015, so that's been 5 years at the time of this recording. I remember one time my daughter and I were going to an EMDR training for child therapists. I was bringing my Sandtray, and I had all the toys propped up in the back of my Camaro, which isn't the best vehicle for transporting a lot of stuff, but I even had the bop bag in there, which is interesting. So I balanced this beautiful Sandtray that I got off of Etsy, based on Tammy Van Hollander's recommendation. So I got this beautiful sand tray. It's round, had the lid on it, the sand in it, and I am ready to show these child therapists and teen therapists how I integrate EMDR therapy and Sandtray therapy. So I stopped at a red light, maybe a little more abruptly than I should have, and the sand tray went sliding and it spilled all throughout the back of the car. So I got up about half of the sand for the training, and then after that I scooped it up and sifted it out and cleaned it. That's one thing about Jurassic Sand, you can clean it. It's just fantastic. But that sand's been through a lot. So if you are interested in Jurassic Sands, I do have a coupon code that I can give you. Robin at Jurassic Sand shared it with me when I told her about everybody in the play therapy community and how I love her sand. So I'm not sure if it has to be capital letters or lowercase letters will work, but I use the capital letters. So just go to JurassicSand.com, and when you check out, use the coupon code J as in Jackie, JF as in Flynn, LYNN, the number 1, the number 0, and then the percent symbol. So J Flynn 10%. Again, that coupon code is JFlynn 10%. I have seen so much healing over the years with Sandtray Therapy. I couldn't even begin to tell you the amount of insights that people have had, the healing, the hope. It's just amazing, and I use it with all ages. I've used it with so many adults, and it's just a way that we can go to that right hemisphere of the brain and just tap into where words do not go. It surpasses the limitation of words. So here's today's discussion with Lynn Langley. She was a guest on my recent Innovative Child Therapy Symposium. She's really good. On the symposium, she was talking about how to use nature in play therapy, and she's also a guru in Sandtray Therapy. I love her. I love her work, and I do dream of going to one of her nature-based play therapy retreats, so that's on my vision board. All right, so let's listen to my conversation with Lynn Langley. This episode is brought to you by EMDR and Play Therapy Integration Support. Are you an EMDR trained therapist that works with children and teens? I'd love to help you integrate play therapy techniques throughout all 8 phases so that your child and teen clients can fully experience the immense healing power of EMDR therapy. Visit JackieFlynnConsulting.com to check out my free webinars, EMDRIA approved courses, certification opportunities, case consultation options, individual and group, and much more. Children are not miniature adults, so working with them in a developmentally appropriate way can make a world of difference. Again, visit JackieFlynnConsulting.com.
Hi, Jamie. Thank you so much for being on the Play Therapy Community Podcast. You know, I'm a huge fan of yours, especially after the Innovative Child Therapy Symposium, where you did an interview on just nature-based play therapy that was amazing. So let me have you just introduce yourself. Tell people who you are and what you do.
Sure, and thank you for having me again. So my name is Jamie Lynn Langley, but I just go by Jamie. It was mainly just, I did the Jamie Lynn because sometimes people don't know if I'm a guy or a girl, and so that just kind of helped a little bit with that. And so I have a private practice in Smyrna, Tennessee, which is right outside of Nashville, about 20 minutes. And I've been here about 3 years. Before that, for 27 and a half years, I worked in community mental health. And I'm a licensed clinical social worker and a registered play therapist supervisor. And I'm trying to think anything else. And I'm the branch president of our Tennessee Association for Play Therapy. That's kind of me.
Yes. I was first kind of introduced to you by a post in the Play Therapy Community Facebook group when you posted on a nature-based, I think it was a play therapy retreat right here in Tennessee, right?
Well, it's in Georgia, so it's about 4 or 5 hours from where I am, but it's in the Blue Ridge Mountains of North Georgia. And we're doing it again this November. We sold out last time, so we're offering it again. But yes, and it was beautiful there.
I'll put a link to it in the show notes, and people can see if it's sold out at that time or not. But it looked amazing. I was like, I need to. You should come. I would love to.
I tell you, just the retreat center itself is to me worth it. Plus, then all the training and just the camaraderie of getting together with people who love being in nature. It was just great.
Yeah. Connection is so very powerful on many levels with our clients, with each other, with ourselves. And I think nature offers all of that.
Yes, it does. All those connections.
So during your interview that we had for the symposium, you talked a little bit about Sandtray. And I know there's a new organization, the World Association for Sand Professionals. Is it professionals or?
Sand Therapy Professionals, yes.
Sand Therapy Professionals. And it looks incredible. I registered for the conference that's coming up, the inaugural conference in May in Evansville, Indiana.
Right.
I think
May
that's
15th to 16th in Evansville, yes.
Oh, that's great.
And some people some people have asked me, like, why Evansville? And they gave us the best rate. You know, being a brand new organization and doing our first conference, we kind of checked a few different cities, and they gave us the best rate. Plus, our president lives there, so she can be kind of heels on the ground for getting. We ordered 200 Sandtrays that just got delivered, so everyone's going to have their own Sandtray. We've ordered 2 tons of sand.
Wow.
And so having someone there that can help, we're going to have to rent a truck to bring all the sand in. So it's pretty cool.
Oh, my goodness. I saw that post in the Facebook group. I know you guys have like a really good Facebook group already, but there's all these sand trays stacked up. It's a little bit like breathtaking, like, wow.
I know when we saw that picture, even Sherry, who, Sherry Evans is our president, and she ordered the 200 sand trays. And when she got them, she goes, I didn't realize how big that would all be, seeing 200 sand trays stacked up like that. So it was pretty cool seeing that picture. So we all got excited.
And all this sand, I have one sand tray in my office, and if I move my feet right now, I can feel the sand underneath my feet because it gets everywhere. I can imagine what challenges that must present and what passion that people have to make this happen, because it's not just like your average conference. If you have Sandtray professionals, you're probably looking at, the Sandtrays themselves, the sand, the miniatures, all kinds of different things that you may need, materials.
Yes, we really wanted to have a true sand therapy experience so people could really do experiential activities and not just like a little inch of sand, or not just sometimes people have to do things even without sand at some trainings when they're this big, when you're having over 100 people. But our board was just like, we really want to have a good size sand tray so they get the sense of what a regular size sand tray is, and have sand that can be depth. So, because that depth work is so important. And of course, the logistics were like, we're just going to figure it out. We're not quite sure what it's going to look like to bring in 2 tons of sand. Everybody's already like, start working on your backs now, because we don't know what all this is going to be like. So, but it just shows that dedication, I think, that we really wanted to give as much of a true experience in the sand as we could.
Yeah, and I think across the board, especially talking to you, I know we had a little conversation before this, quality is like one of the most important things, and just the ethical practice of it. Those are like 2 of the biggies. And I'm really excited about this organization coming to be, because this is such an amazing type of therapy, Sandtray Therapy. I know there's other parts of it as well that we'll get into. But the healing power is just incredible. And the fact that you guys are really going at it from like a quality, ethical perspective is just beautiful. I'm so glad that I get to just even be at that first conference.
Yes, it'll be great to have you there. And it'll be so great just to connect with everyone that's so enthusiastic about it. And when we started this organization, we're primarily Sandtray therapists. So most of us, our orientation is Sandtray. But there is also sand play, and one of our board members is more sand play oriented, Dr. Roz Heiko. And when we were just talking, we were like, why not make this as inclusive as possible? And let's use the term sand therapy, which is still kind of a new term. And I actually learned that from Eliana Gill. So when I got my training from Eliana, she uses the term sand therapy to be inclusive, because she also brings in a little bit of sand play, some of the archetypes and the symbolism of sand play, as well as her sand tray. So she started using sand therapy. Dr. D. Preston Dillon, who sometimes trains with Eliana, who's a sand play therapist, she now uses sand therapy as her reference. So when we were doing this organization, we were like, why don't we call it sand therapy? I checked with both Eliana and Dr. Dillon and was like, is this going to be okay for us to use the sand therapy term? And they were like, yeah, we don't own that. That's just kind of like the overall umbrella. So that way, if someone is doing sand play, they can still be part of this. We have some European therapists like Laura Kaza, who does sand story. It's like she's coming to present at our training in May. So whatever kind of sand therapy you're doing, you can be part of this group.
Oh my goodness, I can't wait. And all of those people that you mentioned are like incredible. Like,
they are. Yes.
Just game changers. And it's just incredible that this is even, coming to be. I think Laura was the one. Tammy Van Hollander was telling me about someone coming over from England that is just beyond amazing. she's actually
she's so excited. So we can't wait to have her. And she's also going to do like a symbol making. And then I mentioned Dr. Roz Heiko earlier. She and John Burr. I don't know if you're familiar with John, but he's been a therapist in Utah for like 30 years, and he does these really deep sand tray trainings. And so he and Roz are joining together to do some things on symbols, and we've just got a lot of neat choices. We have Marshall Lyles and Tammy Van Hollander, who you just mentioned, are doing a day long about trauma and attachment in the sand. And then like Rita Grayson, who has a certification program in Georgia, she's doing one on the neurobiology and the brain piece in the sand. So just lots of great choices. The hardest thing is going to be deciding what to attend, because everyone that goes to register says, I want to go to them all.
Yeah, I do, I have to say, as soon as I registered and I was going, picking out my sessions, it was hard. It was like, I was like, I want to do this one, and some of them are conflicting in times. But I made sure to get in Marshall Lyles. I want to learn from him as well.
Yes, he's really great. He's really great. And I do want to say, sometimes our title throws some people off. So if you don't mind if I mention that just a minute. So the term sand therapy professionals, because not all countries use the word therapist. So we were trying to kind of bring all that in. So we did the sand therapy professionals, but that does not mean you have to be like a guru in sand tray or sand play. You can be a novice and still be part of this group. Like I'm doing the beginning training, so the entry level training at the conference. So some people, this may be their first experience, and that's okay too. So I just wanted to kind of throw that in because that's actually how I got started in my branch. We were having people doing sand tray work without any training. And so speaking to that ethical piece, I was like, there's more than just putting miniatures in the sand to this. And so I just started doing these smaller trainings in my home state of Tennessee. And I've traveled to do it a few other places as well, but just to give some of that basic training that's primarily based on Linda Homeyer and Daniel Sweeney's book, Sandtray Therapy, a Practical Manual. So just the very basics, and to at least start with that. So I really urge people not to do sand therapy of any type without some kind of training, because it can go very deep very fast.
Yes, that's such a good point. And I'll put a link to all of these resources, and especially to that book, in the show notes, so people can search that out. Because
we kind of call it our Sandtray Bible, just because it's so, it's called a practical manual for a reason. It is very practical. It gives very concrete ways to start, but it also addresses some of the neurobiology and different things. So it's I think this is its 3rd edition. So I'm sure there'll be a 4th edition sometime forthcoming, but the 3rd one's only a few years old. But it's got some great information.
Oh, that's great. I think you posted a picture of it in the Facebook group, right? With the Facebook group for the World Association.
I probably did at some point, because usually if someone asks what resources can I use, that's always the one I promote the most. Like, start with this. Don't get anything else. Do this one.
Oh, that's awesome. And you've seen a need, so you started doing small trainings at a local level, and then it just kind of grew from there.
Right. And I've been to Georgia and Kentucky as well. So just kind of like if someone invites me, and I usually do them about 20 people at a time, give or take, because we can still get that experiential component together, because there's some things we share together. But they do get that practical part of actually experiencing what that's like, because honestly, some of my first Sandtray trainings, I didn't get that because of the size of the groups. Like at APT, and sometimes there are 200 people or more. It would be like on construction paper, and we would bring a few of our own miniatures. But there's something about selecting miniatures that you didn't plan to bring. So having things that are outside what you were already, cognitively aware of. So that piece, so I bring a travel set that 20 to 25 people can use. And then just having the actual sand that they can actually do things in. Just brings a big piece to that.
Oh, I love that. That's kind of a lot to travel with, but
it's a workout. That's what I kid. I'm like, people say Sandtray therapy is not a workout. They haven't seen, because all my boxes are stored upstairs. And so as I'm going back and forth bringing the Sandtray boxes down, I'm like, okay, can I get like 3 trainings scheduled at once? So I've made all these travels to get the Sandtray in the boxes and whatever, but it's worth it. So it's good.
Your passion shines through. Now, it's important to know that some people listening to this may not even be familiar with Sandtray therapy. So what would be like your little elevator speech of what Sandtray therapy is and how it helps?
Okay, so probably I'm trying to think about what my elevator speech would be something, but so we always trace it back to Dr. Margaret Lowenfeld. So she was like our originator, and she would she was a play therapist before they called it play therapy. So this is back in the 1920s, and she actually based what she was doing on. So of course in the 1920s, having children even being considered for therapy was a whole new thing, because children weren't very valued before this time period. And so she started a clinic in 1928 that, of course, we kind of kid. The name of her clinic was the Center for Difficult and Nervous and Difficult Children. So it's not a very great title in today's world.
That was about 100 years ago. Things have changed since.
But yes. But so she opened that clinic, and she was doing play therapy, and around the 30s is when it started getting called play therapy. So she's one of our first ones that actually used that term. But so children were using the toys, and she had 2 trays. She had 2 zinc trays, one filled with water, one filled with sand. And the kids started putting the figures in both the water and the sand. And as she was asking them about that, they were calling it their worlds. So out of that, and what she always said is, this came from children. I did not devise this. I did not create this. This came from children. Wow. So many times if you hear the world technique or something like that, that comes from Lowenfeld and from the children who are creating their worlds. And it's a directive that most of us still use now when we introduce Sandtray, about show me your world or create your world or something like that. That's also why our association has world in the title.
Okay.
It's why we didn't use international or something like that. When we said World Association, it was a nod back to Lowenfeld and the original world technique that she started. So it is having sand, usually sand, and we can talk about other things, but sand in a tray, and having things that, depending on your training, some people refer to them as miniatures.
Mm-hmm.
Some people refer to them as images. Some people say symbols. But having small type, sometimes they're toys, but sometimes they're ceramic figures. Sometimes they're things artisans have made. Sometimes they're things from nature. So they're not always a small toy, but some that can be easily placed in the sand that become your words. And so whether you're doing play therapy or even adult therapy of some type, sometimes we just get stuck. Sometimes we don't know how to put what we're feeling and experiencing into words, but our brain can pick out symbols. So sometimes, like when we do collage work, our brain responds to pictures in magazines. We do collages. Well, this is kind of like that, only we're using the symbols from these miniature representations that we bring into the sand.
Wow. Yeah, it goes far beyond where words can go.
Yes. And people are always amazed by that. Usually once they do a training and they just have that little bit that, when I just do a 6-hour training and start them, we'll do a few experientials and they're doing some what I call basic trays, but they're amazed at where they went just in those simple exercises that we're doing in a basic elementary training.
Yeah, and I think it's important to kind of really realize that it's not even anything that they can do right or wrong. It doesn't take them understanding and having to pick a certain thing to say whatever. There's like insights and unknowns that comes out in the Sandtray images as well.
Yes. And I love it when kind of light bulbs start going off for a client, especially like some of my teenagers, and they're kind of doing some things and they're like, oh, wow.
Yeah.
I didn't even realize I was feeling this way until I put it in the sand.
Oh, yeah. I know that's my love for Sandtray Therapy came just from a training in grad school or just exposure in a play therapy class. And I picked out these, just a collection full of miniatures, which I called toys at the time. And I put a motorcycle in there and a couple different things. And I was like, I don't even really, at that time, I didn't like motorcycles. And I just kind of laid it down in the sand. And then the person processing it through with me, they said, tell me about this. I was like, I don't even know why I picked that because I don't even like motorcycles. In fact, the only person I know that has a motorcycle is my dad, and he doesn't ride it anymore because he has cancer. And immediately, I felt that rush of being able to process that grief that I didn't even really realize that was in there. And that was so symbolic that I would have never known to even talk about in therapy. So it was a great just modality to help me access the things that wasn't in my conscious mind.
Right. It's like sometimes we mention a lot, trust the process.
Yes.
And our brain takes us where we need to go. And so many times people will pick out something. They're like, I don't know why I'm picking this out. I've had that experience myself. Like you just said, but it usually reveals itself to us through the process. Our brain just knew where we needed to go. The brain piece of this that we're still learning is just also fascinating.
Yeah, and you can use it with all ages. So, I mean, and you can, it definitely works great with adults. I think that's one thing that people wonder about is this something you only use with children and teens?
Yes, I have a therapist in the office next door. She was actually formerly my supervisor forever ago. And so she used to see children, but she stopped and she's an adult therapist now. She sees 18 and up. Mm-hmm. But she came to one of my Sandtray trainings like, I really want to do this with adults because sometimes my adults just get stuck. Yeah. And so I remember we were setting up shelves in her office and we were bringing in some miniatures. And a psychologist in her office says, why is Elise bringing in toys? I didn't think she saw children. I said, she doesn't. She's using these with the adults. And I said, these are more than just toys. And I remember she kind of looked at us like, I don't know what you're talking about, but okay. And so I keep telling her we need to get her into a Sandtray training too. But Elise, again, who does all adult work, does quite a bit of Sandtray work. And the adults love it and are very comfortable with it. Once they start, sometimes they're like, what is this? Mm-hmm. And Elise will be just like the rest of us in terms of just getting them started by telling me your story, show me your world. And then they realize how great it could be and that you don't have to be a child to use sand therapy of any type.
Oh, so good. I think that one piece that you just said, like, these are more than just toys. That really sums it up. They are representations of our life, our world, our experiences. I know some things I can look at it and be like, oh, that's the rat. But my client will put it in the sand tray and it will be maybe a step parent, or it might be a substitute teacher, or it may be an addiction that a parent is representing of one of their children. It's whatever it means and represents to them.
Yeah, so that's one of the main things I try to teach when I do that introductory training is what I have everyone do is pick out a miniature that represents where they are in their practice right now, whatever that means to them.
Mm-hmm.
And so they'll pick it out, and then we'll go around the room, and I'll have people guess why they think each person picked out what they did. And then the person reveals why they picked out why they did. Now, sometimes there's some similarities because we're all therapists in the room, so there's some common ground there. But sometimes it's something totally different. And that's the main reason I do that is I want people to see it's not about what we see as the clinician, it's what the client sees. And and so that's why we have to be careful about all these interpretations and all that. And I learned that from like expressive arts therapy early on. Just because a client chooses black to draw a picture does not mean they're depressed.
Yes.
Sometimes you explore it with them and you find out, well, my mom's favorite color is black and I want to do a picture for my mom. Totally different than a depressive scenario. So sand therapy is like that. Let that come from the one that's creating the sand in terms of what that meaning holds for them.
Oh, that's so, so good. Now, I have to share something that you said in the last interview that really stuck with me. I have a hard time even wrapping my mind around the fact that you changed your sand based on the seasons. That's amazing.
Yes, for my mandala tray. So I have a mandala tray. And so for any of the listeners that don't know what a mandala is, so it means circle or sacred circle. It's an old Sanskrit term. And so you have a center, and then you make designs around the center. The center is called the bindu. So many times we see coloring books with mandalas and those type of things. And so I love doing nature mandalas outside, but in some of my nature work, we talk about how sometimes we have to bring it inside due to weather or different variables. So I just have this round sand tray, and I used to call it my mandala tray. I now call it a sandala tray because I slipped up with my son when we were at the beach, and he was asking me to show him about my sand mandalas, and I called it a sandala. Well, and then I was like, oh, I really like that word. And I put it out on a Facebook group, and I'm like, is that a word? And Eliana Gill said, I love it. So I'm like, after Eliana said she loved it, I'm like, I'm making that a word. So I now call it my sandala tray. But so what I do is I keep nature items around it, and my kids and adolescents can create sandalas in the sand. And because it's nature themed, I change the sand every season. And that's a fun way to be able to explore different types of sand and how kids react to or my adolescents, how they react to different types of sand. And I don't have a big enough space to have all these sands out all the time because I don't have a place to have like multiple sand trays. But it's like Jurassic Sands has this garnet sand. It's like a pink lavender-ish kind of color, and I bring that out in the spring, so I'm getting ready to bring that out. And then I have like a beach colored in the summer, and then I do one of the darker brown sands that Jurassic Sands has in the fall. And then I do a white crystal sand that my kids call the snow sand, and I do that in the winter. But it is just a little nod to the changing of the seasons that sometimes can be very metaphorical, not just weather-related, but sometimes of our life or of change or just different things. To do our sandalas.
Oh, sandala too.
I know, isn't that a great word?
That's a great word. And I think about that's extra work that you do, and you put that extra work out. I mean, to change a sand in a sand tray, even if it's a small one, it could create some mess. It takes some time, some effort, and
it does, yes,
because you care about your clients. I love that.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, it's fun to do. The kids are always excited when they see, oh, it's the new season of sand or something like that. So,
yeah. Now, you mentioned Jurassic Sand. I have to say that is my preference. I've tried other types of sand, even especially when I was new starting out and I was on a budget. I thought, well, I'm going to get this cheaper stuff to really kind of save some money. I think if you're going to invest in anything in your work, investing in good quality sand is a great investment because the cheaper stuff, in my experience, created like a dust cloud. It created bigger mess. It just didn't really work well with the miniatures. That Jurassic Sand, I literally have nothing negative to say about it. Yeah, I mean, of course, it gets on the floor sometimes, but I mean, it's sand. It's incredible. And I know you can use alternative tech. You can use other stuff like rice and stuff like that. But Jurassic Sand, I feel like that they've really done.
Yes, and Jerry, who owns Jurassic Sands, he's gonna be at our Sand Therapy conference.
Oh, yeah.
And he's usually like an APT conference, and so he has it where you can actually try it because sometimes different sands and different textures appeal to different people.
Mm-hmm.
And that's true for clients as well. That's why if you can at least have a couple different options, I usually recommend at least having one that's a little grainier, because some like the little bit grainier texture and some like the really soft texture. And it's different for different people. And so you get to actually experience it if you see Jerry set up with the Jurassic Sands and the different types. There is a secondary sand company that I use sometimes called Sandtastic. And it's a lot of therapists will use it just if they're not quite ready to budget out for Jurassic Sands. And it's not quite as, for some, it's got a little bit of dust. I haven't noticed it myself that much, but it is another choice if someone just can't quite afford the Jurassic Sand yet, the Sandtastic, because they'll sometimes run specials on Amazon. When I train, I do my trainings in Sandtastic Sand just because of the quantity. And that
I'll put links to both of those in the show notes, and I have a coupon code for the Jurassic Sand if anybody wants to grab that.
That'd be great.
It's so.
And he does have so many choices; it makes it hard to choose. He's got a lot.
Yeah, I have to say, I tried out a couple. My favorite is definitely, actually 3 I've tried out, but my favorite is the red Jurassic Sand. Like, without a doubt, I love the way that the miniature, you can build mountains in there. And
that's his #1 bestseller. I mean, it's the original and it's still #1. He also has some that's very coarse. He has like a river rock sand. And I have bowls. I haven't mentioned my bowls. So when we talk about some of the sand therapy work, just that regulation piece that it does for our brains. And so I have these small wooden bowls. So Dr. Roz Heiko, so when I was doing a training with her, she started referring to them as the Langley bowls. And, but it's just these small wooden bowls, and I just put some small samples of the Jurassic Sand. And so, like, I do have that river rock sand in one bowl. I've got there's a dark brown sand that I keep all the time. It's called quicksand, and I've got it in another bowl. And then I've got the stardust sand. It's this really fine, white, sparkly sand that a lot of the kids love. But many of my kids and many of my adolescents especially will just sit with that sand bowl in their lap, and they just have their hands running through the different sands. And again, different clients will choose different ones. Some of my parents will do this as well. Yeah. But you can just tell that they just need that. And so it's just a stress reliever as they sit there with it. They'll just be talking away sometimes and just having their sand just going back, their hands in the sand just going back and forth in that. So that's a big favorite that a lot of my kids have, even if they're not doing the other sand therapy types of work, or sometimes this may just be their introduction into session.
Oh, so good. It's like using the sand as a regulatory tool to help like their autonomic nervous system just get back online or be able to tolerate whatever there is.
Right. And that's one of the great things about sand therapy is being able to have that piece. So sometimes you may have, especially like younger children, they may just scoop and sort and sift and whatever in the sand. And that may be all that they do, but that all it is not limiting and meaning they're not doing therapeutic work because they're doing a lot of regulation with their brain. Because that limbic system is responding to that. And that limbic system is where we hold, stress and traumatic memories and all that. So if that can get to a more relaxed state, they can then do deeper work, whether it's other types of play therapy or other types of sand therapy. But it's gotten them in a very safe place to do that deeper work.
Yeah, and that's where it's at. Like our clients need to be in that space before. That's really where the bottom up approach, where you can get them to where they could do the top down and process through this stuff that they're going through.
Right, because they'll come in at the end of a school day. Maybe they're, it's been a hectic day. Maybe they were running late for the appointment. Maybe mom yelled at them in the car. Different things that can be happening in everybody's life, or they've had a disappointing grade, or so sometimes kids just need a little bit of time just to be able to help settle. And like I said, sometimes my adolescents need it as well. Sometimes my parents need it as well. So sometimes we'll just bring those sand bowls out and just start that way. Or they might go to the sandala tray and make a sandala. And so it's kind of a similar process. But they're just relaxing and they're just helping that limbic system in their brain just kind of relax and settle, like you said, so they can then do the deeper work.
Oh, this is so good. I can't wait to meet you in person.
It'll be great. It'll be great.
Okay, so we're almost out of time, but I want to make sure that people know where to find you, how to register for the conference, or find out about, any kind of things that you have to offer, your retreats or trainings or anything.
So I'll just definitely first, so the World Association of Sand Therapy Professionals, And our website is just that. So it's www.worldsandtherapy.org. We actually made the website a little bit simpler. And you can go on there and you can find out about our board members and different things. But you also can get the link to the conference, which is May 15th to 16th in Evansville. And so all that information is there. We also have a Facebook group. And then for me personally, my website is www.jamielynnlangley.com. So it's just my name.com. And that just has, just basic things about me. And then I do some occasional trainings. I've got a Sandtray training coming up here in Smyrna. So again, right outside of Nashville on April 3rd. I had a few people that wanted to get an introductory in before the World Sand Therapy Conference. They could go take some other things. So if they can access me here in Tennessee, and then they can take some other things there. But as I said earlier, I am doing an introductory there at the World Sand Therapy Conference. So we do have that to offer. And then the Nature Therapy Retreat, I don't remember the link, but it's under Lynn Louise Wonders.
I'll put a link to it in the show notes.
Okay. And that's in November, and it's the weekend before Thanksgiving. I don't quite remember the dates. I want to say it's like 19th to 22nd of this year.
Okay.
And the retreats are a little bit more expensive because you also are paying for your accommodations and all that. Yeah. So there's a 4-month payment plan to help people out with that. So if they want to go ahead and register and then pay over 4 months, that makes it a little bit easier.
Yeah. And you've got to mention your nature-based play therapy Facebook group
so we have nature-based. I'm trying to think. Nature-based play therapy. Let's see. Play and expressives.
Okay.
I'm trying to think what it's called. Nature-based expressives and play therapy, I think is what it's called.
I'll put a link to it in the show notes.
Should have written that down. But Janet Courtney actually started that Facebook group, and then she asked me to join her, and we've kind of been administering it now for a couple of years, and it's growing. And I just love seeing nature is just so powerful and healing in and of itself.
Yeah.
And when we can bridge that with expressive therapies and play therapies and all that, I call it the dynamic duo when you start. And I love doing a two for the price of one kind of thing.
Yeah.
And so when you can bring, you've already got the therapeutic powers of play, and then you bring in nature with that, it's just doubling to me at least.
Yeah.
The part. So I could start talking about nature and then we'd never stop. But so great things out there.
You have so many things that you're putting out into the world that are helping in such a big way. I can't wait for people to hear this discussion, to be able to, number one, learn about the new organization and the power of Sandtray Therapy, but just kind of get inspired by your passion. It's incredible.
Thank you.
All right.
Well, it's so healing. It's hard not to be passionate about it, right? When you find things that you're like, these really help people, you just want to do it more and more.
Oh, it is amazing. It feels great. It adds to your quality of life to be able to help. Yes. All right, Jamie, you take care.
Thank you so much, Jackie. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Play Therapy Community Podcast. Be sure to check out the show notes for this episode and explore our growing members' library of play therapy related resources at www.playtherapycommunity.com. Prepare to be informed, equipped, inspired, and supported.